Welcome to Layer the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, another in my series of what I call Milestone Moments. These are moments in a band's career where everything seems to come together. Maybe a new band member comes into the fold, or maybe the band changes stylistically and it takes them to new commercial heights. So the band that I've picked for today is Scorpions and their 1979 album Lovedrive. This is actually the alternate cover for the album. I have to get the original because it's way cooler than this. I picked this album because not only was it a change for the Scorpions stylistically and for their career really, it is also an important and pivotal album in the history of heavy metal. So for the band, this is their sixth studio album, and their previous lead guitar player, Uli Roth, had left the band. Uli had really brought a more experimental, jamming, bluesy, Hendrixy element to the band. He usually would write a number of songs on the albums and would occasionally even sing leads. And now with Uli out of the band, Rudolph would become the primary songwriter from here on out and really steer the band in a slightly different direction. Klaus Meine would write the lyrics, and there would be occasional co-writes here and there, but really it's Rudolf Schenker moving the band in this new direction with his songwriting. And in the songwriting becomes way more, if you want to say commercial, I would say it's way more sort of focused and streamlined, doing away with the more experimental stuff from the previous albums, and now just being more focused on songcraft, if you will. I am a big fan of the Uli Roth era, but I also really enjoy this album and the couple of albums that followed after this, like Animal Magnetism, Blackout, and to a certain degree, Love at First Sting. Blackout was actually my first Scorpions album. So even though they've moved in more of a commercial direction, for me, it still works because it hasn't gotten to the point where they would be after Love at First Sting, where it just became way too formulaic. Here, the songs to me are just great, catchy, heavy metal, hard rock. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. There's a lot of great playing, great singing, great soloing all over it. So, all right, and I also mentioned the historical importance of this album in the history of heavy metal. Now, I did a video very early on in my channel where I had my whiteboard set up, and I went through the years and key pivotal albums in the development of heavy metal. And I listed this as one of those albums because coming out in 1979, this album really foreshadows for me where heavy metal would go in the 80s, where starting in 1980, it just seemed like a lot of artists were leaving behind sort of the jamming, the bluesy, the more experimental nature of the 70s and focusing way more on tighter, structured songs, better production, maybe more radio friendly if you wanted to say it that way. Look at Ozzy's first album, Blizzard of Oz. Look at Black Sabbath's Heaven and Hell. Saxon releases Strong Arm of the Law, and the other albums they released around this time, Motorhead's Ace of Spades. I could go on and on, all the albums that were released in 1980. And this album for me really sets that up. The Scorpions are like 1 year ahead of everybody else here with that whole mindset. And even in the production too, the album is produced by Dieter Dierks, who the band would have a long working relationship with him. And the production on this is very clean. You can hear everything. The guitars sound really great, real kind of the classic 80s Scorpions guitar sound is now put in place here. Klaus sounds great. Just a very clean production that you would see a lot of bands doing, especially by the time you got to like 83, 84, 85 with the LA metal bands like Rat and Dokken and stuff like that. You know, this for me feels like that. And so they're sort of ahead of the game in that sense, if you will. So, all right, so now getting on to who plays on the album. All right, so Klaus Meine on vocals. Love Klaus Meine's voice. He sounds great on this. Rudolf Schenker, rhythm guitar. Mentioned at this point, Rudolf is the primary songwriter in the band. Francis Buchholz on bass and Herman Rarebell on drums. Now, Rudolph's brother, Michael Schenker, had just left UFO. He would come in on this album and play on the album jacket. It says he only plays leads. If you go to Wikipedia, it says that he plays leads in rhythm. And on the album, it says that he plays on Lovedrive, Another Piece of Meat, and Coast to Coast. If you go to Wikipedia, it also adds Loving You Sunday Morning and Holiday. Not that long ago, maybe a few years ago, Michael and Rudolph seem to be having this feud. It seemed to be more coming from Michael's end of it, where he was claiming that he wrote songs on this album and didn't get any writing credit, and he played, I guess, on more of the songs. So maybe that's where the difference is between Wikipedia and what's listed on the album here. Matthias Jabs would also come into the band, play on the other songs that Michael didn't play on. Michael would briefly tour with the band, leave, and then Matthias would be brought in as a full-time member, and then Matthias would go on to be still with them to this day. So, all right, so the album song-wise contains, and also should be noted that this was a record label change for the band. They moved on to Mercury Records, and maybe that had some sort of influence, the new record label trying to push them and trying to go in a bit more of a radio-friendly commercial direction, if you will. So the album contains, for me, all the sort of classic Scorpions elements that they would have for the next so many albums after this, where you have your fast, kind of upbeat, over-the-top rockers, you've got ballads, super catchy choruses, great riffs and lead playing. The album's pretty short. It's at about 35 minutes. There's no songs on here that are extremely long. So again, it's that sort of mindset of really trimming away all the fat and getting down to business. So the album starts with Loving You Sunday Morning, which was, I guess, sort of a hit for them. Here in the States, the Scorpions really didn't become a household name until Blackout and No One Like You, when they were getting played on MTV all the time. But Loving You Sunday Morning, I like this song, but for me it feels like a strange album opener because it's sort of a laid-back, sort of mid-tempo song. It's got a nice kind of sing-along chorus. It's got that classic Scorpions like rhythm thing where you're playing like a steady thing and the chords, steady note, and the chords are sort of moving around, that kind of like feel to it while the chords move around. So good song. I don't know if I would have opened the album with it. I would have opened it with the next song, Another Piece of Meat, which is a fast, like over the top one. It's got a real sound, reminds me of the song Blackout, just that sort of real driving Scorpions thing to it. It's got these where the chords sort of bow, bow, hold out, and Klaus is like singing over the top of it. It's got a great Michael Schenker solo in it. Michael Schenker's solos on the whole album are really great, and that one in particular is really good. Next, Always Somewhere. This is another one that sort of sets up where the Scorpions would go from this point after this, which is a ballad, and it kind of predicts what will come with Still Loving You. This formula of the verses are really mellow, and then these big guitars kick in the chorus, always and Klaus just like wailing over the top of it. You hear them do that and Still Loving You, and to me this is sort of the start of that, and this is a really great ballad. I mean, I love Still Loving You. To me, that's a great 80s metal ballad, but this one is also really, really good too. Coast to Coast, it's an instrumental, and I did a video about some of my favorite instrumentals. I did multiple videos on that, and this was in the first video that I made for my favorite instrumentals because I love this. Man, it is a great, great instrumental. It is so catchy. I love, I guess, what you would consider the chorus in it. Dun, dun, ba-dum, ba-da-dum, bum, ba-da-dum. That is just great, man. And just the riffs in it and the way it moves. And it's not like a chopsy instrument. Sometimes when bands do instrumentals, it's kind of a chance for the guitar players to solo and the instrumentalists to show off. That it's not like this at all with this. This is a very catchy, very melodic. I've even heard this song on the radio, and you could easily hear vocals on this. It's just very catchy, very well written. Again, it's the theme of this whole album that everything is very focused in the songwriting. It doesn't feel like there's any, unnecessary things, or they just trimmed away all the fat and got really focused on getting the songs down to their best forms. And this Coast to Coast is a great example of that, a fantastic instrumental. Next, Can't Get Enough, another fast, over-the-top rocker, again, sort of foreshadowing what, like, every album after this would sort of have this kind of classic Scorpions feel, you know, I can't get in now, that Rudolph Schenker, like, rhythm guitar sound. The guitars here are very clear. You could say they're, I don't want to say bright, but not in a negative way, just very, they just jump out of the mix at you. Is There Anybody There? Got an interesting sort of reggae feel to it, which is kind of different. It's got a really nice solo in it, who is Matthias Jabs here at this point on this particular song. So it's an interesting one, maybe not my favorite on the album, but it's still pretty cool. It's got a catchy chorus, and it's neat to see them experimenting with a different feel. And again, they would sort of seem to do that on most of their other albums. There would always be something, at least one song, that had sort of a unique feel to it. Lovedrive, the title track. This is another upbeat, at this point, again, this sort of classic Scorpions. Lovedrive, wheels of fire. Great catchy chorus. Every song on here could be a radio hit. Every song on here is really, really catchy. You know, there's no, I mentioned this in other videos that I made. Maybe this is me being old-fashioned or something, but when I hear a song, I want to know where the chorus in the song is. I don't like when I hear a song and the song ends, I can't remember anything about it. I'm not sure, what was the chorus in the song? That's not the case on this album, and like this song's a good example of this. It just, Lovedrive just comes jumping out at you. And the album ends with Holiday, which was sort of a hit for the band and would become a live staple. It's, again, a classic Scorpions sort of ballad of formula here. Being Born, the mellow kicks it up a notch and then gets really big. So, all right, so there you go. There's my milestone moment for the Scorpions. Lovedrive, milestone moment because it shifts them stylistically into a new sound. And, you know, even if you're only a fan of the Uli Roth there, you can't argue that from this point out, they would just keep getting bigger and bigger, maybe peaking with Love at First Sting, becoming huge on MTV and on the radio. And for me, like I said, this album and the next couple albums, they hit a nice sweet spot for me. They're really nice and melodic, but they're still very interesting and fun to listen to. Great riffs, a lot of energy. So, and its historical significance with heavy metal, with them sort of predicting what was going to come from metal in the 80s. So let me know in the comments down below what you think of this album, Scorpions Lovedrive. Let me know what you think about how it sits sort of, I know it came out in '79, but how it sits with the stuff that will come in the 80s. Maybe if you're a fan of the Uli Roth era, let me know what you think anyways of this record. So, all right, leave a comment down below. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. And until we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.